thought it would be good to, you've played for what, like a month and a half now, something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
So now that you've been into it a little bit, just kind of see where you're at, see what questions, what understanding behind the game you want to know. So really anywhere from, kind of what I do as a DM to just rules you don't even really completely understand yet.
Well, let me ask about the campaign, I guess. Is this bits and pieces like from something else, or is this all you?
No, so I mean the map. I honestly I don't know who made the world map.
Right.
But other than the map and then me just picking like random locations where everything's gonna be, everything's pretty much just out of my head. I mean, obviously Tiamat and Bahamut are D&D lore. They're the good dragon god and the evil dragon god. But the whole campaign story itself, that's just all me.
Right on.
Hold on. Let me grab books while you think of your next thing.
Yep.
Just in case I have to reference something even. You can ask about any of the other characters. You can ask about your own character, something you don't understand, something you have a little bit of a grasp on even.
Put me on the spotlight. Oh, shoot. I mean, really, there's a lot of it that I really don't understand.
That's what I mean. This is kind of like, yes, it's kind of learning for you, but it's also, you know what I mean, like whoever ends up watching this, they can, because you are a new player, so this video is geared towards, it's going to be geared towards newer players, in my eyes at least, to help with understanding of things.
Okay.
Yeah, what's up?
How did we come together as a party? I can't remember.
I will put that in whenever I do the actual campaign diaries.
Okay.
Can you go through this trip crap with me? Like how I realize it's a strength, like strength has something to do with it, but
So
I don't
100%. Like
a
a trip check?
Yeah.
Alright, so a trip check, right? So the basic way for you to initiate a trip check, without a feat, without a special weapon, right, requires you going up to somebody and just basically being like, hey, I'm going to trip this person, right? And then the rules behind that in 3.5, all this is 3.5, is basically you make a melee touch attack. If your touch attack succeeds, then... Sorry, let me back up a little bit. If you don't have a feat that prevents them from taking an attack of opportunity on you, they first get an attack of opportunity. If that attack of opportunity hits, we don't have a lot of people trip. I believe if it's like a grapple, that your trip auto fails right there.
That makes sense. I walk up to trip you, you punch me in my face, I don't trip you.
Yeah, pretty much. Make an unarmed melee touch attack. This provokes an attack of opportunity. No, okay. So, no. Even if they hit their attack of opportunity, you still get your trip check. But like I said, with grapple, it would cancel out the grapple. So from that point, they miss, they hit, whatever, it doesn't matter. You make a melee touch attack. If your melee touch attack hits, then you guys have to do opposing rolls. As the attacker, you have to do a strength check. As the defender, you can do a strength or dex check. Basically simulating like, hey, even though you pulled my leg out from under me, I can quickly replace it back down on the ground to prevent myself from falling. Or strength for strength, you go to pull my leg and I just outmuscle you.
Okay.
Huge benefits for that. Like in your party, Victoria has a feat lets her do a move action and a coup de grace in the same turn. It lets her do a coup de grace as a standard action.
Oh.
So she can move her full 30 feet and then coup de grace someone. Whereas a normal character has to use a full round action to coup de grace. So your party's kind of set up beneficially with trips. So, I mean, you trip somebody, they technically become helpless on the ground, and then your teammates can chop off their head if they're susceptible to that. For you, I believe you have...
I got that whip.
Let me pull up your character sheet real quick. So for you, you have the whip. You also took Improved Trip, which gives you a +4.
I got the helmet.
You have your whip, which gives you a +2. And you have the Helmet Battle, which you have 3 times a day you can use a +2. So, I mean, you're already getting a...
That's a +8.
Yeah, you're already getting a +8 on your trip check. And then other factors that play into a trip check is size. So every size category you are different. The bigger person gets a +2, I believe it is. Like I said, for every single size category, though, you get a additional plus. So just remember that if you go to trip a bigger opponent, they get additional pluses. Oh, sorry, it is a +4 for every size category.
Oh, Jesus. So do I get a +4 if I'm trying to trip a gnome or something?
Yeah, so if you're trying to trip a small creature, then you'll get a +4. If you're trying to trip a tiny, you'll get a +8, diminutive +12, and a fine, you'll get a +16 on top of your +8 from all your other crap.
What is that? Like a fairy?
Yeah, like a fairy.
How do you trip a fairy?
You blow it over. I mean, really, you give it a strong breath.
Smack it with my whip. I feel like that's not.
It's really like, I mean, you look at it, a +16. It's like taking a bug and rolling it onto its back. You know what I mean? Like it's going to be pretty hard for it to avoid being tripped by something that much larger than it.
Right.
But then you take it in reverse, right? You got large, huge, gargantuan, and colossal. Colossal, no same exact thing. A colossal gets a +16 automatically to you.
There's no way I'm tripping a giant or nothing. Dragon.
I mean, you technically could because you do have that +8, but at the same time, you only have a +2 strength. So
yeah, that's what. Yeah.
What else? What else?
Your wife's spirit weapons. They were saying that you buffed.
Yes.
They voted or something, and you buffed her, and she got those. What?
Okay.
What exactly? Because she's got 4 of them, right?
Yep. So I basically homebrewed some stuff up for her. So the spirit weapon is normally a level 3 spell? Level 2 spell. So the spirit weapon is normally a level 2 spell. Yeah, level 2. So what I did was I went through, looked at other spells that were maybe similar, comparable, and I figured out what I thought would be fair as per day levels of each one. So like a normal spirit weapon, she gets a +1 every 3 caster levels on it, to damage at a max of 5. That's it. That's all she gets. And then it's just a D8 because of the type of weapon it is from her cleric or from her deity. And it just basically it follows a Morningstar's base stats, but it gets a +3 to damage. And then it uses her wisdom modifier instead of strength, and it uses her base attack. And then what I did was every step up, like level 3, I gave her an extra, her wisdom times 1.5 to hit, so that equaled out to an additional +2 to hit. Level 4, I stepped up the damage to 1 point of damage per 2 caster levels, max of 10. And then I basically just alternated back and forth every level. Level 5, I gave it wisdom times 2 to hit, still 1 per caster level of damage. Level 6, we went wisdom times 2 to hit, and damage was 1 point per caster level, and so on and so forth. And I also stepped up the damage dice every level. So level 3 I went D10, level 4 I went 2D8, 3D8, 4D8, 6D8. The next level would be 8D8, but I haven't built it yet because she can't cast that high at all.
The party decided you got there.
Yeah, and that was, like I said, that was, I mean, she used Spirit Weapon a lot, and then the party kind of decided, I threw it out to the party just as a, hey, you guys have been doing so good, blah, 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 that I'm going to give somebody a buff, and I worked it into the story, that basically, I think it was Yandala came down and blessed you or something. I think it was her deity came down and blessed her and basically just gave her these extra spells.
So we got many followers yet.
Yeah, you'll get some followers eventually. What else? I mean, even inner workings of the game, like, how do I determine this? How do I determine that? Like, what? Anything that you were curious about, that how this game just works in general.
The armor, how does that, like, my equipment, like
So-
I have a +2 chain shirt, and I don't understand how that,
So you don't understand how your AC works yet?
yeah,
Okay. So your AC, right? In 3.5 you get a base of 10, and then plus your Dex modifier, which will give you your, which is in your case is 1. So 10 plus your Dex modifier, plus any like magical things that would give you like deflection and dodge type stuff would go towards your flat-footed, or not dodge, sorry. Would go towards your, flat dodge, yes, because it's going towards your touch. And then the biggest thing to your AC, right, is your basic AC items are your initial 10, your armor, maybe a shield if you have it, and then your dex, and then sometimes magical items, whatever. But for your chain shirt, right? So a +2 chain shirt. gives you a 6 to your AC. How that works is a regular chain shirt gives you a +4, which is that bonus slot right there that says 6. And then it also gives you a max dex of 4 normally as a base one. But since it is a +1 or higher, you get a max dex of 5. And then you also get an armor check penalty. And we'll get to armor check penalty in a second. But this +2, like I said, it's going to give you a +6 to your AC because the base chain shirt is +4, and then the magical +2. Let me see your breakdown. So you have another armor. I believe you have a natural armor, don't you? Oh, no, you have a bracer on. Okay. And then your bracer, which should be up here in the shield slot. We're going to go ahead and move that bracer up here. Alright, so chain shirt and bracer all fall into the armor bonus, right? You can see the armor bonus right there says a 7. So 7 for armor, 1 for dex, 10 for base, gives you your AC of 18. And then, you know, you can have like rings, you can have cloaks, you can have bracers, all types of magical items that add into your AC. Does that make more sense to you now, or?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. What else? Because I know a lot of this too, it's automatically done for you, so you're like, just like,
yeah,
oh yeah, it's this because I don't know why, but that's what it is. Like, do you understand how your weapons work?
What do you mean? Like the code inside of it, or?
Nope. Just like when you roll a hit, do you understand why your numbers are what they are?
Because my stats are dog shit.
Okay. So, we're going to roll, which one's your main weapon? The Last Whisperer?
No.
I'm going to say yes, because it has a D8.
I think I started using that bow that Victoria gave me. It's
the shocking bow? Okay, down to weapon 4. Okay, so I'm going to roll this real quick, and then I'm going to explain where all the numbers came from.
Okay.
Oh, look at that, I rolled a crit too. Alright, so that kind of works even better. So I definitely have to fix this bow up, just looking at it. But let's go over this. Alright, so a bow, it's going to work off of dexterity, because it's a ranged weapon. Melee weapons work off of strength. So what happens is you take your d20, which in this case, we obviously rolled a nat 20, that's why it rolled a crit chance. You take your d20, so 20 plus your base attack of 10, right? And then your applicable modifier, which is your dex, so 1. So that gives you a 31 at that point. And then this bow must have a +2 on it, right? No. Oh, I rolled flank on it. That's why. So I also, when I rolled it, I said yes to flank. So you got an additional +2 from flank. So you got 20 on your dice roll. You got 10 on your base attack. And then you got 2 from flank and 1 from dex. Equals 33. So
okay.
on your next one, you rolled a 13. Same exact rules apply, right? On the crit check. You rolled a 13 plus your base attack of 10, plus your dexterity modifier because it's ranged, plus yes to flanking because I just felt like saying yes to flanking. So 13 plus 13, you got your 26. Damage kind of works the same way. you're going to take your weapon dice, which in this case is a D8. You roll a D8, and we rolled a 3. And then this bow also has shock on it. So it's also going to roll a D6 for that shock, which we rolled a 5, which gives us 8. And then plus 1 on your dex, because you add dex to damage. So you add, to hit, you add your base attack and your appropriate modifier, strength or dex. And then you add any special numbers in there, like flanking or, in some cases, like precise shot and stuff like that, where you got to be within 30 feet. Not precise shot. Just mind blanked. Point blank shot. Point blank shot within 30 feet, you add a plus to hit and damage as well. And then also the weapon. If the weapon has weapon enhancements, so like if it's a +2 longbow, you would add that +2 into hit and damage. Weapon focus would add to just hitting, and weapon specialization would add to just damage. So you have 3 types of things that apply to a individual weapon: enhancement, focus, and specialization, right?
Okay.
Does that all make sense, or do I need to re-explain any part of that for you?
Kinda.
I mean, if you don't fully understand it, please ask. I want to make sure what I'm saying is...
Yeah. So what's this? The 9 damage is a D8 and a D6.
Yep, a D8 and a D6.
Okay.
We rolled a 3 and a
And
5.
then it's... Okay, and then the +1 is from the weapon damage ability?
Nope, the +1 is from your dex. Your dex...
Oh, okay.
Your dex
Gotcha.
adds to hit and damage.
Gotcha. Okay, and then what's the second attack?
The second one is...
Oh, it's the crit damage.
It's the crit. So if we said yes, you critted, you would take that 12 damage instead of the 9 damage. Which I have to fix that weapon up, because I can see looking at it that it's not right. Because it should have rolled 3d8 plus 3d6 and then +3 for your dex, because everything got multiplied. How I run it, at least. Some people run it as just the dice rolls get multiplied by the crit multiplier, but I run everything gets multiplied by the crit multiplier. So depending on the DM, either you'll roll 3d8 and 3d6 there, +1, or 3d8 and 3d6 plus your dex 3 times, which would be 3 for you.
Okay, I see where that... Okay.
So that actually would have been a lot more damage. It would have looked more like... $21. It would have looked more like a 21 right there instead of 12.
Oh.
So it would have been 9 versus 21 if you critted. So if you didn't crit, you would have taken 9. If you did crit, you would have taken 21.
Okay. All right. What if I'm playing that? What is it? The +2?
If you're playing what?
The Inspire, Courage, Greatness, whichever one it was.
Okay. So I don't remember. Do you get your own Inspired Courage once you stop playing?
I don't know.
Sorry, we haven't. We've only ever ran one bard before, and it's been a while. I know one of the two gives you yourself. The effects for some. Yeah, so no, you do not get your own Inspire Courage.
Okay, that's not a big deal.
But I mean, it's like, it's kind of like saying that you got inspired by your playing your own music. Like, yeah, it can happen, but
I could have a big ego.
yeah, exactly. You gotta have a big ego. Yeah, because everything just says the ally must be within 30 feet.
Okay.
Whereas, I know some things say, like, that you're included.
Is that the same thing with... I can't do it with Inspire Greatness either, right?
No.
That's just the same thing, only, like, single target.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, Inspire Greatness.
I didn't write what that does.
This is what books are really good for. Like, I don't always know. And I just, quick reference. Sometimes I'll make a call on the spot and then go back later and, figure out the actual ruling and then adjust from there, whether I want to homebrew it differently or not. But in the heat of the moment, sometimes I won't even touch the book and I'll just be like, hey, it does this. And then, like I said, I'll go back later.
Right.
And that is perfectly okay. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, if you are a newer DM or you just don't know the rules and you go back, I always suggest going back and looking at the actual rules if you quickly called something on the spot. And like, I would talk to you later about it too. Like, if I found out I was wrong, I would hit you up after the game and be like, hey, I know during this last session I ruled you could do X, but actually you can only do Y.
Right.
But yeah, definitely happens. And I mean, there's even like, sometimes you get, a lot of people call it the rule of cool. Like, I remember one time my wife jumped on the back of some kind of like rock covered monster.
Oh, it was my fox.
Yeah, it was a ninja, right? You were a ninja at the time? Yeah, she was a ninja at the time, and she ended up mounting the back of this rock creature, and she was like, hey, can I like pull it apart? And I was just like, you know what? Roll for it. And instead of having her do attacks, I had her do strength checks, and every chunk she successfully pulled off, I dealt damage. So there's stuff like that happens. Like, if you guys come up with stuff that I think's cool, most of the time I will, let it happen and just.
Unless it's just completely impossible.
Yeah, I mean, there's some things too, like, oh, I want to run and I'm gonna jump 100 feet up in the air and do. I mean, there are impossible things.
I'm gonna light
It's
myself on fire and then I'm gonna tackle him.
Yeah, it is never a bad thing to tell your players no. If it's impossible, tell your players no and get with them afterwards if they feel salty about it. Hold on, I gotta plug in my computer real quick.
Yep.
What else?
Oh, I was asking about the +2 that they get. Where does that factor into the...
Okay, so your +2 factors into their to hit, their damage, and saving throws against fear effects. Yeah. Okay, so saving throws against charm and fear, and hit and damage. And actually, you're getting pretty close, I think, to +3. At level 14,
Yeah.
you'll be +3.
Yeah, I got that in here.
Level 14 bard, not total level.
So 15 bard then.
Yep. So well, I forget. Did you have a race level of 1?
1, yeah.
Okay. So yeah. So I'm gonna change something up on your page then, real quick. 1 race or 1R/12 bard. And this just kind of tells you where all your levels come from. You can rewrite it specifically however you want, but that's just kind of how the players have it. The rest of the players. So
That makes sense.
I can look at it easily and be like, okay, you're a level 13 because you have one level of race and 12 levels of bard. So yeah, 2 more levels and you'll pick up the +3 instead of the +2.
Good deal.
I'm just glad you're not doing like some other people who decide to multi-class with their very first character and they make themselves confused with, especially
that
levels.
I'm not very smart, so I didn't think that was a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, I don't suggest multi-classing too much with, your first, even really your second character, unless it's like a melee to melee class. That's not too bad then. But
so not what Nick's doing?
Yeah, Nick has he has 3 classes right now. And it's rough. I mean, like, I fully understand it, right? So I make sure we level up, and he's starting. He really is. He's starting to understand exactly how his levels work. Whereas with you can literally look at the book and be like, okay, I level up, I get all this next level bard stuff. Whereas his is, he took, hold on, let me just look to make sure. Yeah, he took 1 level in race, which, whatever, that's fine. That's still easy. He has 1 level in rogue, so that he could go his prestige class. He has 5 levels in his war mage, and then he has 6 levels in his prestige class, which is dagger spell, right? What makes it hard, especially for a caster, to do something like that, or a little confusing. It's not necessarily hard. It just, until you get used to it, it's confusing. Is he levels up in his dagger spell, but then he has to go back to his war mage because his dagger spell gives him higher casting ability of his lower level class. He casts magic like I think it's at this point like a 10th level war mage, even though he's level 5 war mage, and a 6th level. Yeah, because he only missed 1 casting level on dagger spell. So first level dagger spell did not give him any additional casting, right? But levels 2 through 6 gave him +1 arcane casting to the class that helped him go into it. So his war mage is a 10th level caster, but only a 5th level war mage. So it gets a little confusing.
Yeah,
But like I said, if you do multi-class, just make sure at least the first time you do it, you have somebody that understands multi-classing. And if you do multi-class, I suggest doing melee multi-classing first, so you can see how to combine 2 classes before you do a character that does magical multi-classing. And where magical multi-classing can get even more confusing is if you do like a sorcerer and a wizard or whatever other thing that doesn't add 2, it makes its own separate. So then you're like, okay, I can cast up to 3rd level spells as a sorcerer, and I can cast up to 4th level spells as a wizard.
That's
and
awful.
Each one has their own per days. Oof. That's a headache. And
Is there enough
Um,
spots in here to mess with all that?
you gotta. I mean, on this Roll20 character sheet, not really, but you gotta have a kind of a patient DM, and B, you kind of gotta be a player that can take care of your own character completely without help to do something like that.
Yeah.
You're a good girl. Uh, what else, man? What else you want to know?
I had something, but I lost it. Um. There it was right there. Son of a crap.
How well do you understand alignment stuff?
Nick was telling me about it, like how Vincent couldn't be with people knowingly because of his deity or something. I don't know. Like he couldn't knowingly be with bad people
Yep.
or
So
evil.
that is how he chooses to play his alignment. Let me look at what he is before I keep talking, because he kept Victoria the same alignment as Vincent. So Lawful Neutral, right? He plays very heavily on his lawful part, right? Lawful Neutral, in the handbook, they nicknamed it the Judge, right? And basically, through, I don't remember what video or podcast I even heard it from, but someone kind of described it like this to me before, and it's kind of how I follow it now. Law, you have some kind of a code, right? Whether it's personal code, code of the land, whatever have you. You have a code and you follow it. Think of, like knights and samurai and stuff like that. They had a code and they stuck to their code. They were lawful, whether they were lawful neutral, lawful good, lawful evil, that's a different story. They were lawful, they had a code and they stuck to the code. Right? Neutral doesn't mean that you're just like, man, whatever, I don't care. And right now we're kind of talking neutral versus like lawful and chaotic. That type of neutral, it's not like, I don't care, whatever. It just means you don't have a code, but you're not complete chaos either. And then chaos is rather simple too. I mean, you're
extra.
You're chaotic. Yeah, chaos to me is more of rogue. Like you break laws, not follow them. Whereas good versus evil is its own thing as well. Chaos is you go out and you break laws. You don't want there to be like an established rule type of deal. There's, like I said, a couple different ways to look at it. Like you could look at it as a government way. Law is you want a government. Chaos is you want the people to just be free to do whatever they want. Is a different way to look at it. I think actually, like I said, I've watched a couple things, and I forget where I've picked all these things up from, but they were points that I've heard that have stuck with me that I think were really good ways to look at them. And then good versus evil. Good versus evil to me is actually a lot simpler than law and chaos. Good versus evil to me is good is the needs of the many, evil is the needs of the few. So, I mean, chaotic good would be what's that Simon Pegg movie where he's a cop? Hot Fuzz. Kind of like the townspeople in Hot Fuzz, right?
Mm-hmm.
You could look at them as lawful evil in your perspective or chaotic evil in your perspective, but to me, I kind of look at them as chaotic good. Because in their eyes, they were doing it for the greater good.
Chaotic good is more or less that it's not the needs of the many, it's the wants of the many.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Evil isn't the needs of few, it's the wants of the few.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, to me, that's a good example of it. But again, it's all subjective. It's all very subjective, and these are just different ways to look at them. And every player plays them their own way. When it gets really hard is when the DM steps on the toes of how the player views it. I think good advice to any DMs that are out there is let your player tell you how they feel about the alignment. And then maybe hit a couple key points with them that you think need to change, but let them take their alignment and run with it how they want, you know? What else? Oh, metagaming. This is a good one. I don't know if we've talked about this one with you yet. Metagaming. I absolutely hate metagaming.
How does that even apply here?
Huh?
Is that like normal meta stuff? Like the same principle of it, or is that completely
No.
different?
Alright, so metagaming is like, I don't remember who it was. Metagaming is if, like, we were to sit here and I was like, hey, we're going to fight a purple worm, and you have a monster manual on your side, and you go, oh, let me look up everything about the purple worm. Well, you as a player might know it, but your character doesn't know it.
Right.
So how are you going to know exactly how to fight that creature?
Right.
So that is a huge metagaming play, which is a lot more prevalent when it's online players because they can just sit there and Google whatever they want. But
So cheating is really what it's called.
yeah. Oh, so yeah. Basically, it's kind of like cheating. It's player knowledge versus character knowledge. Player knowledge, if you bring you are a player, right? If you bring player knowledge into the game that your character does not know, that is considered metagaming, right? There are many different ways to handle it, and depending on how heavy the player's metagaming too. Like, it could be as simple as just talking to them, and they'll be like, oh, okay, I didn't realize that, I'm not supposed to do that. Or it could be as hard as severely taking items from them, like, oh, you want a metagame? Okay, cool, I'll meta DM and I'll take your stuff. Like, on my end, right? I don't metagame as the DM. I don't sit there and, as whatever you guys are fighting, be like, oh, I know he's weak against this, so I'm going to use this against him. Now, if throughout the fight I hit you with something, like, say you're weak to fire, right? I hit you with fire and I notice your character takes more damage. Yeah, of course I'm going to apply more fire attacks to your character because I've my my temporary character, the monster I'm playing, has now noticed that. Unless I am something of low intelligence, then I might not notice anything at all, and I might just keep fighting you whatever seems natural at the time. What did you say over there, dear? Oh, like a good example. The puzzle I used in the last start of the dungeon.
The final countdown.
Yep, was actually from a video that I watched on YouTube once from Puffin Forest. I stole a puzzle from one of Puffin Forest's videos, and my wife knew it. She knew how to solve the puzzle, but in game, you saw it. She did not solve the puzzle for you guys.
Right.
She didn't tell you guys, like, hey, all you gotta do is wait, and it'll be fine. No, she played along, and okay, maybe one of, we have 7 players, so one of 7 players knows the puzzle. Don't ruin it for the other 6.
Right.
And that's a big thing about metagaming is it might seem fun to you to just smash something because you know exactly how to do it, but then you got to think about the other players. Is that going to take the fun out for them? And there might be games too where your GM encourages metagaming.
I'm okay if we're all dying, please.
Your DM may encourage metagaming in some campaigns, which can be a crazy campaign because you got to think if he's allowing you to metagame, what's to say he's not going to do it right back at you and hit everything against you? But yeah. What else? What else you want to talk about, man?
I don't have a deity.
You don't have a deity. You don't need a deity. You don't
need
have
a
to have a
deity.
deity. You can have a deity if you want.
I didn't know what it did. Like you said, hers gave her shit. I mean, I don't really want free stuff. That's fine.
Clerics and paladins play very heavily into having deities.
Right. Yeah.
Yep. It is. I just realized I'm sitting here showing like the DM side of the map on this.
I've noticed that shit was circled, but I didn't realize anything else.
It's okay. I just changed it over anyways. But yeah, I was showing parts that you guys haven't revealed yet in the campaign. I just realized that.
Like I said, not too bright.
And that's actually a perfect example of a metagame. If any of you guys were to go back and watch this, you actually could figure out where every single dragon is now. All of them were marked on the world map.
That would take the fun out of everything.
And that's what I'm saying. Like, yeah, okay, sure, you know where to go now, but is that fun? That's like playing a single player game. That's like playing a MMO as a single player game and just looking up the walkthrough to jump your party to where they need to go
sure.
exactly. What were we just saying before I just realized that?
Deity.
Oh, deity. Right. So, clerics and paladins rely heavily on deities. Clerics for domain spells, paladins for a couple of different things. But as a non-cleric, non-paladin, they're not as heavily relied on deities, depending on the campaign. Your campaign could rely very heavily on who your deity is. Like, there was one campaign we ran where a player had, I forget the god's name right now, but he had the trickster god as his deity.
Okay.
He had no reason that he absolutely needed a deity. He just, as a player, wanted a deity. Okay, that's fine. And he saw the benefits that the cleric was getting from, worshiping her deity every once in a while. when they were in a bad situation, they would pray to her deity, and you know, if I thought I put them in a harder situation than they really were, maybe I would have the deity answer their prayer. And that was also early on when I was learning to be a DM. But he would pray to his deity, and eventually his deity started answering, but not in the way he wanted to, because again, he was a trickster god. Basically, think Loki.
Mm-hmm.
He would come down. He was the god of trickery, wine, women. I think that might be it. So basically, kind of like Bacchus and Loki, I would think together. But he would come down and he would just randomly take some of his gold. Like he'd be asleep and there'd be a lightning storm, and every time he came down to the realm, I would have lightning strike where he landed. So he would generally come if it was storming out, right? So he could disguise himself coming in. He would steal his gold pouch. He would come in and come up as an NPC and give him misleading information. There was one time a traveling merchant and his family came across, and they started to like distrust the merchant group, but then they decided not to. They decided to trust them. And they ended up panicking, and I can't remember for sure circumstances, but it ended up being his deity got mad at him, and he came down in a lightning bolt on top of the merchant's carriage, killing the merchant's family, because, again, he comes down as a lightning strike, so he caught the whole thing on fire. And just, yeah, it was a bad night. Bad night. But yeah.
I'll probably leave at 11. No, she said 10:30 or 11.
Yeah, I do believe his deity ended up killing him in the long run.
That's hilarious.
I think after that he started kind of trying to turn against his deity and stopped worshiping him and stuff like that, and it made him mad. Because he was sitting there for months, like real life months of sessions, like worshiping this guy and just buying bottles of wine and leaving it as, tribute to him. And then all of a sudden he just stops, and it made him mad. So he killed him eventually. But yeah, so that's, one example of having a deity and not needing one. But that was also he was a evil type of deity, and I can tell you exactly who he was in a second. Maybe I can't. Maybe I can. It might have been the god Otamara. May have been who he was. But yeah, it says his title is the Laughing Rogue, delights in women, wine, and song. He's a prankster and master of disguise. And his temples are few, but many people are willing to raise a glass in his honor. So, like I said, when he stopped worshiping him, again, he already has few followers, so it made him mad. But you just kind of got to read up on deities if you really want one. That is not a problem.
After hearing about that, I'm good. Pass.
I mean, it depends on your god. Like I said, the whole party at one point was praying to Pelor because their cleric's god was Pelor, and Pelor would grant them favors. seldomly, but Pelor would grant them favors every once in a while. Because they would give tributes to Pelor. And they would pray to Pelor and ask Pelor for help all the time. To the point that Pelor, the DM, got tired of them asking for help and just stopped answering. So, I mean, there is, like I said, pluses and minuses to having a deity. When you don't need a deity, the pluses and minuses are fewer and far between. But if you play to the deity enough, it will come into play in the game.
Actually, I think, yeah. Okay. I looked up some history on my race when I first made it.
Yep.
And then I mentioned the god Thoth.
I think he's Asimir.
I don't know if that is one that you could add.
I'm sure there's a way we could do it. And we can.
Because he's the god of knowledge. And I figured that was fitting.
Yeah. But I think for this one, because this is almost an hour-long video,
Okay.
I think we're going to cut this one. And if we do have another session fall through, we will definitely do something like this again. And if you want to keep sitting down and asking questions, I mean, we can even sit down and make another one.
That's up to you. I'm gonna leave.